In a soft voice. A little bit louder, we move from the sweetness of that intimate voice, the most intimate voice that's reserved for our beloved, into a declaration of our devotion. So let's sing one more time in that sweet, soft voice. Everyone sing, please. Everyone close your eyes and make your chant and offering to the beloved within your heart. A little bit more volume. With your full voice. Oh, beautiful. Namah full voice.
We actually are going to be able to fit, I think, most of you in here. But if those of you who are already here, we're going to be warm and cozy tonight. So if there's even a little bit of space next to you, move to the person on either side, because we have a lot of our beautiful sisters coming in to join as well. They should come from that side. Anandra, thank you so much for the beautiful, beautiful music to start.
Everyone,
Thank you.
everyone for singing.
Yes. Oh, everyone together. We have had several questions come in advance, so we'll take as many of them as we have time for and try to get to as many as possible. The girls, I know this wasn't all of you, so. How, they're trying to see all of the ones that we have. So, okay, how did your parents take it when you became a renunciant? So, on that level, on the personal level of my path, it was difficult in the beginning, as you can imagine. But here's the thing that applies for everybody. Ultimately, as parents, what we really want for our children are that our children should be happy. Now, typically we also have our own agenda of what box we think that happiness should come in. So parents may have a box that says, my child should be this, or my child should be that, or my child should marry someone who's like this, or someone who's like that. But at the bottom, at the core, at the foundation, really what parents want is for their children to be happy. When they realized, in my case, when they realized that what I had found was something so real, so deep, so beautiful, even though it wasn't in the box that they had expected my life to come in, even though it wasn't in the box of success they had thought or the box of happiness they had thought, it was so real and so powerful that ultimately they knew that it had to be right. I remember my mom saying to me, I'd been here maybe a year or so. And of course they had had a very difficult time in the beginning, and it certainly was not what they had expected. But I remember my mom saying to me after about a year, maybe less even, she said, she said, just being in your presence, I feel so serene. Which, coming from a mother to a daughter, is unusual enough. Coming from a mother whose daughter has just made a life choice that was not at all what she had expected or wanted was even more unusual. But what it made me realize was the truth is a magnet. And when you choose a path of truth, it actually pulls everybody toward it. It's not about convincing others. I remember in the beginning, Puja Swamiji said to me, don't try to convince them. Don't try to convince them. Just love them. He said, whatever they want you to do, just do it. Just go back, be with them, love them. Don't try to convince them. Just you be your love. You be your truth. And when I did that, it had this incredible power of grace, because this is what we've been speaking about all day in the different sessions that we've had, is when we're really connected, It's not about what I'm full of. If I just eat a sandwich or a pizza, my stomach may be very full, but that doesn't benefit you in any way. Me telling you about the great pizza I ate isn't going to fill your tummy. But when what we are full with is the presence of the divine, when what we're full with is truth and light and love, that actually overflows out of us onto those around us. And so by living your truth, living your light, living your connection to God, you bring that to others. And you become that magnet. And for me now, it's been 22 years. But it didn't take that long. It took only a couple of years for them to really, really deeply understand. Of course, first they had to come here. They had to meet Puja Swamiji. They had to get over the original, oh my God, she's been kidnapped. Oh my God, she's joined a cult. Oh my God, she's been brainwashed. Natural fear that particularly parents from abroad, parents from the West would have. People don't expect their daughter to go off to India on a vacation with a backpack and become a renunciant. So once they got over that, by realizing where I am, by realizing who Puja Swamiji is, by realizing what Paramarth is, then it didn't take very long at all for them to realize the blessing of it. But for others, whether what you're embracing is a life of actual spiritual renunciation, or whether you're just choosing a path in your life that isn't necessarily what your parents had wanted for you or had thought they wanted for you, that's not with the box and the agenda that your parents had had. In both cases, number one, remember that ultimately really what they want is for you to be happy. It's just that they really are convinced that their box of happiness is what will make you happy. In most cases, it's all they know. It's what their parents told them. Get an education, get these degrees, accumulate higher and higher degrees, then you get a good job. The job will buy you things. Get married, have children, have a house approximately, this size, a white picket fence approximately this high. Take your vacations at these sorts of places and resorts. They're not telling you that because they want something bad for you. They're telling you that out of love. That really is what they think will make you happy. Again, remember, it's how they've lived. And so it's also really important, and this brings us actually to a different question that was there about helping other people also see God. When we experience God, how do we make them understand and bring them in as well? You have to understand, those of us who have been blessed to have this experience, we're no better than other people. There's a spiritual sort of arrogance that tends to seep in. A spiritual sort of better than thou that tends to seep in. And it's really important that whatever we choose, whatever path we choose, that we live it as our truth, we live it with love. God's not arrogant. God's not wrapped up in God's own ego. God just is the presence. Puja Swamiji always reminds us that God never signs his name. You never see on the back of any leaf or any flower that it's written, G-O-D. After creating everything, no name. And it reminds us that really when we're on a spiritual path, how to be humble about it. Doesn't mean that we don't live our truth. We do live our truth. But it's not about how to convince others. It's not about how to tell people, whether they're our parents, whether our other family members, whether our friends, whether our colleagues. It's not about how to convince them that we are right, how to bring them into it as well. That almost never works. The only thing that tends to do is push people away. Instead, because our instinct, of course, to do it is very pure. We want to share. We want them to experience what we've experienced, especially if we see them suffering. But here's the thing. It doesn't work unless you are living it. That's the only thing that works. Live your truth. Live that love. Live the love of God. Live the presence of God as you experience it. And that in and of itself will be a magnet. Whatever your truth is. When you live it, it brings others automatically. When you just try to convince them, it doesn't work. So you live it, you embody it, you be it, you will then exude it. We now have great scientific equipment and studies to tell us what our rishis and sages and saints have been saying for thousands of years, which is, thoughts are things. We are energetic beings. As you think, so you create. This is spiritual science. And now we have scientific technology that actually can do brain scans, not touching the head. Most brain scans, they hook up electrodes to your scalp, measure your brain waves. They now can do brain scans with a machine that sits a few inches outside your head. What I love about that is the implications are incredible. It means that which is going on inside my head actually is creating a powerful enough vibration outside that a machine can pick it up and read it. And so don't think that you have to shout and convince. Just being, just thinking, just living that truth is that which changes the vibrational energy outside yourself, creating a whole new world for the people around you to live in. And what they're going to find is, wow, they feel drawn to it. There is something about it that's healing, that's peaceful, that's true. So focus on your work on the inside, such that that which you exude is love and peace. Right? It's like the example that I always give about our air conditioners that only give cold air because that's all they have. It's not their fault, they're air conditioners. When we're all squeezed in here, it's nice. But if we all left and this room became empty, and the AC was still on, it being December and cold, and one person were left in here with the AC on, chances are they'd catch cold. If they stayed here long enough, if the AC stayed on long enough. But not because the AC is trying to give that person pneumonia. Not because the AC woke up in the morning and said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get that guy. But simply because that's all it has. And we are actually very similar. We too, like our air conditioners, like our heaters, we can only give out what we have. And so if what you have is that presence of the divine you found, if what you have is love, is peace, then you're going to exude that. And you don't have to shout. The air conditioner doesn't have to shout at us every once in a while, I'm an AC. We know that. We can feel the air. Doesn't have to remind us. Doesn't have to say, by the way, this is cold air coming from me. We know that. We can feel it. And so when what you're exuding is divinity and love and peace, you don't have to tell everyone around you, this is God. This is truth. This is love. People feel it. And that brings us into a second question that I had promised I would take up, which is, we know that we are divine, and we can feel that divinity within us. But there's still something in us that stops us from fully living as divine with divinity. What is that? That is the ego. And it's sad because who we are at the core is divine. When we meditate, when we pray, when we're connected deeply to the self, we feel it. We feel that love, we feel that peace, we feel that divinity. But then sometimes we get busy, we get out in the world, something happens, someone says something to us. Maybe in some cases we just open our eyes and walk out of our meditation room and the world happens. And suddenly I no longer am able to access that. Suddenly there's something in me that's like a thorn that keeps me from feeling divine. Don't worry about it. It's just ego. Don't fight it. Don't hate it. Don't hate yourself because of it. The ego actually served an important role in your life when you were young and growing. The ego was what helped you know who you are. It's important to teach young children the difference between themselves and others, whose cookies are whose food is whose toys are whose, right? Don't steal, don't hit, don't grab. That all has to be rooted in an awareness of knowing your body is separate. I don't get to hit you or steal your sweater or eat your cookies, push you out of the way. I have to understand that you're a separate being with autonomy and rights. But then as we grow, especially as we grow on a spiritual path, the ego becomes that thorn, keeping us from living as love and peace. And it's the ego that does 100 things. The ego's the one that says, you're not really so good. I know you. You know, you're really jealous. You're really judgmental. You're really negative. You're really stupid. You're not even good at what you do. All that stuff that you get credit for, that's just because those other guys helped you. That's just because you looked it up online how to do it. You're not even that smart. And then these seeds of doubts flower into these trees that suffocate us inside. And suddenly we can't be divine because we're worthless. We can't even be worthy of occupying our place on earth. We are nothing. That's one game of the ego. Another game of the ego is, you're too good for this stuff. You're wasting your life, you're wasting your potential. You know, you really should be making something of yourself. What are you wasting your time for? Yeah, love is fine, peace is fine. Do that in your spare time. Love a couple. It means a couple of people. Love your spouse, love your kids, no problem with that. But what's this love the world stuff? That's impossible anyway. I mean, really, who can love the world? And, you know, you're too good for this. Do something different. Make a name for yourself. Fulfill your potential. Those people are stupid. Those people are this. Those people are this. That's another game of the ego. But in that case, it's not that we feel so unworthy we can't do anything. It's we feel so full of ourselves that we can do a lot, but none of it actually takes us where we need to go. None of it actually brings us home. And so we become like these hamsters running on the treadmills. We're maybe running really fast, but we're not actually getting anywhere. We start accumulating a lot of nothing. It's another game the ego plays. The ego also plays the game of separateness. The ego yearns, the ego wants, because the ego, if I am this being, this separate being, this physical being, well, this being has a body, this being has a bank account, this being has a title, this being has a job, this being has so many things. And the ego, of course, wants it to be the best. And so then the ego is also always wondering, why not me for this? Why not me for that? I want this, I want that. I don't like this, I don't like that. The ego is the one that's constantly saying, yeah, I like this, I don't like that. I want this, I don't want that. Just bringing us into places of opposites constantly. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna speaks so beautifully about a yogi is one. A yogi is one who's balanced all the time. In pleasure, in pain, in success, in failure, in wealth, in poverty. Now it's important, he doesn't mean the yogi can't tell the difference between hot and cold. The yogi can't tell the difference between a hug and being stabbed in the back. It's not that. It's that my sense of self is not rooted in what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what I want, what I don't want, my way, not my way. It's another thing the ego does. But all of these, if you notice, there's a common thread that runs through them, which is they all take us out of an experience within the self that's truth. An experience within the self that's love, an experience within the self that's the presence of God. And ultimately, that is what life is about. That's why we are here. And so when that happens in your life, when you feel the ego come as that thorn in your experience of divinity, whether it's doubt, whether it's arrogance, whether it's just general separation, opposites, don't hate it. Don't hate you. That's what the ego loves. Another ego game. Look, you can't even do this spiritual thing right. The ego will play all kinds of games. Just see it. See it. Look at it. Understand it. Make room in your experience of yourself for it, because every garden of roses also has thorns. So in our spiritual experience, there can also be place for the presence of an ego. It's not that we have to figure out how to become absolutely ego-free before we can be on a spiritual path. The only thing that's most important is we have to stop giving it the reins of our life. Stop letting it run the show. And so you see it. You understand it. You acknowledge it. You create space for it. But you don't let it run the show. Let it be there. If, with grace, you come to a place where you find one day it's gone, that's divine grace. But if you don't worry. Don't worry. As I said, the garden of roses has thorns. You just have to make sure that they're not cutting us, that we understand where they are, we can see them where they are, we're able to move around them. We're able to take in the fragrance of the rose, even with the presence of the thorn. And the thing about the ego, lastly, is the more you see it, the more you recognize it, the less strong it is. It's actually a very interesting phenomenon. Most of us think if I just ignore it, it will go away. But the thing the ego hates the most is to feel threatened and ignored. The ego's whole game is, hey, look at me, I'm here, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get your attention. And so much like a child trying to get your attention, who the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. You see it. You acknowledge it. You smile. Because it also is part of you, remember. It's part of you. If we weren't supposed to have egos, we wouldn't have egos. God is perfect. My vision of God, my experience of God is perfection. Whatever we've been given, including our egos that lead to certain emotional states, sadness, pain, anger, frustration, all of that we go through, that's just part of the human package. It's part of being human. If we weren't supposed to have them, we wouldn't have them. So we understand they are there. We understand they're part of our human package. We make space for them. But we just don't let them run the show. We don't make decisions based on them. We don't allow our thoughts to be guided by them. So when the ego comes in and says, you're stupid, you're worthless, or you're too smart for this, you're too good for this, whatever it may be, either way, we look at it and we say, hi, haven't seen you in a little while. Maybe it's only been an hour, maybe it's been a week, however long it's been. You acknowledge the presence. Thank you for joining us. Have a little visualization in your mind. Offer it a seat toward the back of the room. We're not trying to annihilate parts of ourselves. We're simply trying to have as much of an expanded experience of the self that there is room for the presence of an ego. There is room for the presence of emotions. But that which runs through it, the ground, the field in which all of that lives, is the experience of the divine, the experience of divinity, the experience of oneness. And so these come up. Sometimes they come up to teach us something. Sometimes sadness is there, or anger is there, or pain is there with a lesson for us. So it's also good to ask, okay, what do you have to say? Have you come for a reason? And we listen calmly, and then we make decisions. I'm going to listen to it, follow it or not. Usually we don't, but sometimes it's there for a reason. Anger, for example, at situations in the world, anger at world hunger, anger at poverty, anger at what's happening to our environment. That gives us a lesson. I'm supposed to do something about that. I have skills, I have abilities I can use to work with this. So it's a good lesson. So whatever comes up, see it, acknowledge it, and then let it go. Don't kick it out, just let it go. The metaphor for me that works the best is like wispy clouds on a windy day as they blow across the blue sky. So they come. It's ego, it's an emotion. It's fear, it's desire, or it's just a thought. Rather than focusing our attention on them, we keep our attention on the blueness of the sky between them. That blueness of the sky is the presence of God, the presence of love, the presence of truth, that divinity within ourselves. And let the rest just flow through. And slowly, 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 the clouds become smaller. They go by quicker. The space between them is longer. And there's more and more of just the unbroken presence of divinity in our life. So have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. We will take more of the ones from advance as well as any that are here tomorrow evening. I look forward to being together again tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening.